Hey, welcome everyone. I'm Agnes, your host for today's podcast episode. I'm excited to be joined by AJ, co-founder and CEO of Hotel Manager, a hospitality tech startup hoping to transform the hospitality industry and enable a new digital ecosystem to improve the hotelier and guest journey. AJ, I'm really excited to get to know more about you. So can you briefly tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came up with the idea for Hotel Manager?
Absolutely. Thanks, Agnes. Pleasure to be here as well. Thank you for that fantastic introduction. Just to take a bit further. I used to be, I started my career at Buckley's and I moved through the graduate scheme, eventually landing the dream job of head of innovation and emerging technology. So I was responsible for coming up with cool concepts within Buckley's, exploring the use of artificial intelligence, data, machine learning, blockchain, amongst other technologies, and coming up with new products and solutions for our customers. As part of that role, I spent a lot of time, fortunately, traveling around the world, talking at various conferences about how we're applying new technologies. And it was crazy that on one hand, I would come off the stage talking about artificial intelligence and then go back to a hotel room and have to call up reception and look at a big book of services to get to what I needed. So that's really where the idea for Hotel Manager came about. It was around 2-3 years ago. And I started to get more and more interested in why hotels were so far behind in adoption of technology. Some exploration found that many of the larger hotels like Hilton, Marriott, have invested millions of pounds in developing their own guest-facing mobile applications. But many of the mid-market, smaller, non-chain boutique hotels just didn't have the budget or the technical experience to build and launch their own mobile apps. And that's where Hotel Manager was born. So Hotel Manager is a low-code platform that allows non-technical hotel managers to build and deploy using drag and drop features their own white-labeled guest app, fully branded with all of their services. From a guest perspective, they're able to order room service, check-in, message their hotel. And from the hotel's perspective, they're able to now get access to guest data, improve that guest experience through deeper relationships, as well as advertise all of their services in a digital way. That's kind of what we do at Hotel Manager. It's been almost a year and a half now on this journey, and I'm sure we can dive into some of those challenges and what it's been like.
Yeah, wow, that sounds really exciting. I mean, I've also come across the fact that I check into a hotel and, room service and everything, you have to like call the receptionist and all of that stuff, whereas nowadays it should be so much easier. So I'm curious as well, like when you started your journey, like at what point did you decide to actually get funding?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs out there will have different stories of when the right time is. So just to double click on our journey. So when I came up with the idea, the first challenge was finding developers, finding people that can. So I'm a non-technical founder, and the first challenge was finding the people that would be able to build this. And of course, those people aren't free. So initially, a lot of our funds came from personal funding. So myself and my other co-founders pulled together to hire offshore developers. But very quickly, we found that having an in-house development team or having a CTO or technical founder was absolutely critical. So at that point, our main costs were developing the app and marketing and sales, which we were doing in-house. We didn't really have any need for external funding.
Because you mentioned that you had first an external development team, right? So like what did work out for you, or what were the main problems there?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, we wanted to get an app out there, and we didn't really have much experience of developing a tech startup from scratch. So our immediate, like many entrepreneurs I spoke to, our first port of call was let's find a dev team that we can pay and outsource this to contractors And we did. We found, of course, there are loads of people out there that will charge you uh, crazy amounts of money to do whatever you want them to do. Um, so we did find some developers, and they built a clickable demo, I'd describe it as, but they weren't really invested in the idea. And that was the first challenge that we found. We were effectively having to uh, provide them with every single functional requirement, and there was no innovation there in the product development or on the engineering side, which really held us back. It meant that we were spending more of our time focusing on how do we build the product, where do we put buttons, and what do those buttons do, as opposed to where I wanted to spend my time, which was speaking to customers and trying to get more feedback on the features and product alongside the development. What we ended up with was a very expensive clickable demo that wasn't fully functional, a large bill, and not an MVP that we could put in front of customers. And it was that point we cut that relationship off, and we went and found a CTO, another co-founder who had that technical experience and that believed in the vision of the product and what we were trying to do.
Sounds already like a hard lesson learned.
Absolutely, yes, lesson one.
So you were talking a little bit about your funding journey as well.
Yeah, so at this point, we were developing our MVP, and we had lined up some customers that were ready to use the product and were giving us feedback as we were developing the MVP. And we were able to launch with room service as our first feature in January of last year with our first customer. They loved it so much that they introduced us to two other customers within a month, and the ball was rolling. At that point, I left my job at Barclays, and a couple of months later, as I'm sure everyone knows, COVID hit. All of our potential customers' hotels closed, and we were kind of sat there thinking, okay, what do we do now? Where do we take the product? Where do we take sales? Where do we take marketing? And there was a lot of uncertainty at that stage. We were still very much founder funded. Our costs were quite light, and I think we kind of went into a shift in strategy, and we focused 100% on feedback and the product. We now had some time to almost take a step back and look at what our competitors were doing. Nobody was selling in this period because hotels were shut. Nobody was buying. And it gave us, as a startup, the opportunity to think about what's our USP, what are the features that we need to prioritize for reopening post the pandemic, and actually now that hotels and general managers also have more free time, we can engage with more prospects and really learn about what their pain points are and develop those features to solve those pain points. So this is kind of March, April, May of last year, and we were able to run quite light during that period. It was around July, August when things started to reopen again in the UK, but we started to see an uptick in demand from hotels, driven by the need to maximize health and safety. So the guest staff as a means of minimizing social distance and maximizing social distancing, and allowing guests to get a very similar experience, access to all of their services with a very light and skeleton staff team. So we saw hotels disrupted by the pandemic, eager to adopt a digital solution, and guest apps were something that was widely promoted by many industry magazines and bodies. It's at that stage that we now had customers coming on board, our old customers reopening, and we found there were two areas of our business that were just moving a little slower than we would have liked: the engineering and the sales. We now had more feature requests. We had a backlog of requests from customers and prospects that we needed to get through much faster. And we had a whole ecosystem of hotels that we wanted to reach out to as quickly as possible to tell them about Hotel Manager. And it's at that stage that we started to look for funding. So at this stage, we'd been purely founder funded. So unfortunately, we hadn't been building some of the physical face-to-face connections that many startups would have done pre-COVID. We were looking for investors digitally, We weren't able to go to networking events and many of the traditional well-trodden paths. So it was quite new to us as well. And that's where we found companies like PitchDrive, one of the first companies that were doing a very data-driven decision-making process and a very quick decision-making process to get funding.
And how exactly did you find PitchDrive? Like, for example, did you Google funding for startups and then it just popped up, or how was it for you?
I wish it was that easy. I think I found PitchDrive through a blog article. So PitchDrive had been doing quite a bit of press at that time, and it was through one of those publications that it came to light. PitchDrive, this awesome new company that does a decision within a matter of days, within a matter of clicks, purely data driven with very light touch process. That was quite appealing. We'd gone through the process with a couple of angels prior, and it was a very long-winded process. We had to provide multiple updates and revisions of decks. We keep going back with more information. And the general message we were getting was that because of the pandemic, many investment decisions were being put on hold. And when we came across PitchDrive, it was quite a refreshing approach. It was quite easy, and some of the feedback from many of the other cohort startups that I've gone through was that it was just an incredibly insightful and two-way relationship that they had found with PitchDrive. So that was one of the key motivations.
And how much money did you actually raise?
So we raised 150,000 euros through PitchDrive.
Wow, that's a cool amount to start. So I'm also generally, curious about your outlook of the market. So when it comes to that type of software and solution, I've heard of it before we met, which means that I know that there are other solutions out there tackling the hotel market. So I'm just curious, like, what are you doing, especially in order to stay ahead of your competition?
Yeah, absolutely. So hospitality tech, I think, it's an industry that's blowing up over the last few years. Many other entrepreneurs have realized that there's a huge opportunity with hospitality tech. If we look at parallel companies like Airbnb, Booking.com, huge tech companies that have built and carved out new markets within the hospitality space. Yet hotels still haven't gone on that journey, and the customer experience is so different when you book an Airbnb versus you book at a hotel. So there are quite a few travel tech startups, and I think 2020 was the big year for travel tech startups, especially with the Airbnb IPOing. And what we found is that many of these companies are tackling different parts of the value chain. Some are looking at pre-booking, some are looking at the guest experience, some are looking at feedback, customer relationship management, data. And what we found speaking to hotels is that there is a very fragmented technology estate. There are so many different applications out there that they struggle technically and also capacity-wise to manage their tech estate. Particularly in the smaller hotels where they're trying to look for a very simplified and automated solution. So Hotel Manager really differentiates itself in a few ways. One is being that all-in-one platform. So we are trying to build a marketplace that will allow you to integrate many of these solutions like upselling software, your CRM, your PMS, your POS, your back-end capabilities, and access that through a very simple, clean, and easy user interface, which is our cloud console. The second is around creating a digital ecosystem as opposed to a digitized solution. So many of our competitors have taken that big hotel book and just put it into an app. Loads and loads of information that isn't relevant to the guest. And what we're trying to do with Hotel Manager is create a product that really allows the guest to get to the information that they want as fast as possible. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about our UI and our UX. Third is our kind of guest data proposition. So we see guest data and personalization as the future. And one thing we'd like to do is build that product and give the power of that data to the mid-market and the smaller boutique non-chain hotels to be able to make decisions on their operations faster. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle is this kind of front to back technology stack. So many of our competitors have focused just on the front end, on just the guest experience. What we're trying to do, and some of the feedback that we've got from our existing customers that they've really liked, is being able to connect that guest experience with the back of the house technology stack. So housekeeping, the restaurant manager, etc., being able to also use the same platform to manage those guest requests. So it's not just a shiny front end that solves the guest experience, but also a really powerful content management system that solves the hotelier's pain points with technology.
Okay, that sounds super cool. And if you look at your journey also so far, like, what do you feel like were the biggest obstacles that you had to face?
Elephant in the room. Obviously, COVID is a big challenge. I don't think there are many industries or startup stories where your entire customer base just shuts down across the globe for a number of months. So you just cannot sell. So there are probably quite a few different excuses that entrepreneurs can have for selling. My product's not ready. There's bugs. It's really difficult to engage and get access to the right decision maker. But for us, they were just closed. So I think that was a big challenge. And I talked about some of the opportunities that we had because of that time to further develop the product. But I think mentally for the team, but also just in terms of getting that continuous feedback to improve our product and really test and learn as fast as possible, that was a challenge. Thankfully now we are out of it, and some of the things that we did do were we looked at outside of the UK, which countries were opening up faster, and is there, given we're a SaaS technology company, can we very quickly deploy our product for hotels in other countries and further validate the product. Whilst we had that downtime, could we talk to hotel managers and get their feedback and get them invested into the product? And can we actually waitlist hotels for when we are ready to launch and when we are able to deploy the solution again? So there were things we can do, but that was definitely a challenge. And I wish I had a solution for that. We're still dealing with that. As the globe, the world does start to unlock, we are seeing that increase in demand. And I think some of the positives that come out of it are that hotels have been disrupted and they are looking now to run their hotels with less staff and in a more digital way. I mentioned the challenge around development teams, and if I just kind of dig into that a bit more as well, on the engineering front, I think it makes a huge difference to have a technical founder, technical co-founder. When Agni joined the team, he immediately understood what our vision was, and that is now built into the product in every line of code. Our ethos for having a really great customer experience, for making sure that every feature in the product is easy to use, simple, from a non-technical standpoint from the hotel side and from the guest side. I think it makes a huge difference, and we're now slowly growing that technical team. And I think there are probably challenges that will come with that as well. And then I think the third big challenge for us was on the sales side. So even though getting COVID now, we getting access to hotel managers because it is a B2B technology space. Hotels, as they reopen, they're extremely busy, these hotel managers, and just trying to get the face time, and also for non-technical hotel managers, trying to take them on that journey of hotel manager isn't just an app, it's not just a technology or a software, but we're actually trying to change the way hotels are run. We're trying to change, enable new business models. And taking hoteliers on that journey is going to be a challenge that we continue to tackle.
What are the next steps for Hotel Manager?
There's quite a few things that we're doing. So as I mentioned, with the funding, we've managed to bring on board more development capacity. So we're able to build features faster, but somehow we have more requests from customers. It's kind of an ever-growing battle because as they use the product, they think of more and more things that they'd love to do with it. So I think we continue to increase our engineering capacity to meet that demand and continue to provide customers with great service and great product. We want to increase our brand presence. So Hotel Manager, for the last year and a half, we've been operating sort of under the radar, and we've slowly been building a public presence. So what we want to do over the next few years is start to attend those physical trade shows, go and see hotels face to face, go and see our customers, and really build awareness of our brand and our product. Getting those case studies, and also building out a referral network that will allow many of our customers to refer and introduce us to their friends, and hopefully give us really great feedback and audits. And then I think just looking at how we tackle more of the global market. So there are 400,000 hotels globally. That's a huge target size. So for us, it's thinking about how do we scale effectively. We can't take all of those customers on tomorrow. So it's really making sure that we grow at a really consistent and fast pace, but making sure we can walk before we run.
Okay, that sounds awesome. So are there still any tips or last learnings that you would like to share for other entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think I can keep you here all day. If I was to distill it down to a few, I think one, because we've talked about funding, that's quite an important one. I think the immediate reaction for any entrepreneur, especially the ones I've spoken to, is I've got an idea, I need a massive valuation and I need funding from day one to make this happen. And I think one thing I've learned is that actually you can run very, very lean for a very, very long time. And you don't really need funding, or you need to think about what that funding will help you achieve and when the right time is. For us, we were able to develop our MVP and get our first customer on board without any funding. And it was only at the point where we needed to develop faster and we needed to expand our sales that we realized that now we needed to pay salaries and bring people on board, and that's what the funding will help us achieve. So I think that's a big piece of advice on the funding side. We've talked about the development, sort of some of the sales side, so I won't touch on those again. I think the other big thing for me is getting the right team in place. I was very, very fortunate to have great co-founders. I think finding those co-founders early on is important, and making sure you had the chat with them and they kind of believe in the vision, they believe in what you're trying to achieve, and they're not just there for the wrong reasons. All of my co-founders, we all are aligned on what we're trying to achieve with Hotel Manager. We're not just trying to achieve a massive valuation. We're really trying to change the industry. We're really trying to provide a really good product to our customers. And I think it's important, and I've heard horror stories from other entrepreneurs that have had co-founders leave after a few months just because financially they're not in the right place. They've had co-founders fighting over equity. They've had co-founders holding onto that equity and then leaving, and they're in a challenging position, which is why it's important to have the legal frameworks early on. But yeah, I think having those co-founders in place, having the right people for the right jobs, and having the right team and the motivation behind it is absolutely critical to the success.
Those sound all like good lessons. So how can others get in touch with you?
They can. So I'm not on Instagram anymore. I came off it last year because it was just so distracting. But they can connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or by email, ajwad@hotelmanager.co.
Thanks so much, AJ, for sharing all of your lessons learned and all of these great tips. It was truly interesting to dive into Hotel Manager. And for everyone who's watching or listening, if you want to find out more about PitchDrive, take a look at www.pitchdrive.com.